So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. So, let's see. Hold on. Uh, There we go. I'll host myself. There's a saying when you go to someone's house, make yourself at home. So I'm doing that. I pinned myself. Okay. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Um, I am again very happy to have been asked by the good folks at Tibetan Buddhism in Santa Fe, New Mexico. By the way, a place I've never visited in my life, but I'm very appreciative for this opportunity from the center. So thank you to Venerable Dundrup uh, and all the good folks at Tibetan Buddhism for hosting these sessions. Um, this is now the fifth and final session of the topic we've been covering, Dharma for Difficult Times. And it also marks the, well, let's not get too nostalgic just yet, but it marks the last session that I'll be giving for the center in quite some time. Prior to this session, uh, we had another series on recognizing the false I. And now, later this month, I'm actually going to be going back to the US to continue my own personal retreat and practice. So I'm going to be, yeah, stepping away from outwardly kinds of, teaching for a while. Um, so let's try to get as much in as we can. That has been my my strategy for better or for worse in the past few months. I've yeah been teaching a lot here at Tokwan. Oh yes, but don't worry. Uh, hopefully, uh, during the retreat, right? We need some time when we have a more inward focus, developing those qualities, and then that then helps to uh, increase and bolster what you're then able to offer others as you then come out into society. So anyway, I was going to say this at the end, but in general, as would-be kind of aspiring bodhisattvas, we have two jobs. One, of course, is to benefit others, but the other is to increase our ability and capacity to benefit others. So in general, sometimes in our lives, we are going to go through periods where we're very outward focused, benefiting others in a more direct way. But there'll be other times when we need to sort of go inwards and further our training and yeah, increase our capacity, as well as a bit of rest and recovery that I sometimes need to be reminded to do. So, in any case, oh, this is interesting. The host has disabled participant screen sharing. Hmm. So, what can we do with that? Are there hmm, any Zoom experts that we can help me with that? No, huh? Okay. Well, that is okay. Let us start in the usual way. Since we've been doing this for so many weeks, then we should know at the beginning. Most important thing is to set a positive motivation. So please think that the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings. And in order to benefit sentient beings in the best way, I must develop all my inner qualities to the highest extent. Then and only then will I have the skills, ability, knowledge to guide sentient beings most effectively from the oceans of samsaric suffering to the state of enlightenment. And therefore, to learn about the tools, the training to develop these inner qualities, I'm now going to listen to this teaching. Okay. So then the second thing, so I am not the host. I got a message in the chat. I somehow,
You can go, you can click on the participants and claim
yes,
host. So you should see at the bottom of your screen where it says claim host.
no, I have invite and copy invite link. The link
Okay.
I got, I think is the same as all of you.
Okay.
I'm just ordinary, simple. That's okay. So you know, we'll make do with the best of the situation. Okay. So the second thing we normally do then is take refuge and generate bodhicitta. So by now, maybe you have this refuge verse um, memorized, right? But it is, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. From the collections I accumulate from listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. From the collections I accumulate from listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my merits from by my collections of practicing the Dharma. Sorry, of listening to the Dharma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I need the screen share too. No, so I think I mentioned in a previous class that usually in that stanza, right? It usually is daki jinso gibe sunamki. So from my practice of generosity and so forth. But when we listen to the teachings, we change it to by my collections of listening to the Dharma. And then later, also, when you teach Dharma, then actually the Lama or the teacher would say, by the collections of teaching the Dharma, right? Daki chishe, right? But yes, then many of the teachers, when they are reciting with the students, they don't say that because then the people will get confused, right? Only the one person should be saying, explain the Dharma. But then if the teacher says, by my merits of explaining the Dharma, then the people who are listening start to say, explain the Dharma, and then they're not explaining the Dharma. So then it gets confusing. Anyway, like that. Okay, so let us, I will go to the presentation that I had spent so much time making, and now I don't even get to share it. That's okay. Um, because this will help me. So now the Dharma for difficult times, right? So usually in these sessions, after generating bodhicitta, going for refuge, then we start with a bit of a review on what we had talked about. And what we have talked about over these last, 5 weeks, uh, we're talking about Dharma for difficult times. So we spent the first three sessions actually just giving a quite um, broad overview of the Dharma. And then in these last two sessions, we're talking about difficult times, right? So uh, in the first two sessions, we explained the Dharma from the perspective of the Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment. And we then talked about the three types of practitioner who have different motivations for their practice. and therefore have a different sort of main practices that they engage in to attain their three different goals. So you can never review this enough, but the initial practitioner desires a good rebirth, a good situation in their next life, and therefore accumulates the cause for that, namely good karma, practicing generosity for wealth, practicing ethical discipline for, in general, a good rebirth, practicing patience to, well, have good companions, um, and and they also abandon negative karma as much as they can, um, because that is the cause of a lower rebirth. Then we have the so-called middle capable being, who then sees everything that the initial capable being sees. And rather than just aspiring for a good rebirth, although they do want that, they then go further and want to be free of all the samsaric suffering, seeing that how even in a good rebirth, well, there's still so much different kinds of suffering that we experience. You know, take our example. We're humans, which in the scope of the universe is an extremely fortunate rebirth. It's probably better than, 99.99999999999% of the sentient beings out there. And yet we still experience various kinds of suffering situations on a daily basis, right? And then these middle capable beings also understand that even getting a good rebirth in their next life is not, well, that permanent a solution, because what about the life after that? Okay. So reflecting in this way, the kind of middle sentient being or middle practitioner in the Lamrim, then they desire for full liberation from all of samsaric suffering, not just liberation from the suffering of the lower realms. Okay. Then we have the great capable being, the great practitioner, who has as their goal not just even the mere liberation from samsara, but the complete enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And here they do this seeing, reflecting on the fact that all sentient beings, just like them, want to be happy and want to avoid suffering. And not only that, but all sentient beings have been our kind and beloved mother, father, um, our beloved, kitty cat, um, that, both have, cherished us in the past and brought so much happiness and joy to our lives. And then also are in a situation where they're drowning in the ocean of samsara, as it were. And therefore, I think we mentioned this thought, the stanza from the great practitioner and yogi Togme Zangpo, that when one's mothers who have cherished you from beginningless lives are suffering, what is the use of your own happiness? Therefore, to develop the mind of bodhicitta is the practice of a bodhisattva, right? So when these cherished sentient beings are suffering, then for us to just attain liberation for ourselves, it's like not that big a deal, right? And therefore, to generate the mind of bodhicitta, that is the practice of a bodhisattva. Okay. All right. So that was the Dharma, right? The Dharma. And then when we were talking about difficult times, on one level, we were saying how all these contemporary issues that we see in the world, these are just various manifestations of the first truth of suffering, right? The first of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, right? Where we talked about, meeting with what one doesn't want, being separated from what one does want, suffering of pain, suffering of change, the suffering of uncertainty, the suffering of insatiability, all these various kinds of suffering. Now, when you point to any contemporary issue, it's just different manifestations of the First Noble Truth, right? So then, one of our main strategies that we are then going to employ for dealing with the difficult times are just some of the standard kind of tools and techniques the Buddha gave us to deal with suffering. Um, but part of the genesis and motivation of this course is that sometimes it is helpful to have someone or ourselves then draw more of a direct connection with what we see in the world and what we see in the traditional texts, right? So the first and kind of main, mm, oh, so sorry. So that list of the contemporary issues, huh, I see something. Event host. We have an event host now? Has someone come? Event host. I see. Look at this. Hello?
Hello. Sorry, I don't know where Shayla is today.
Can you maybe transfer the rights of the host to Venerable Namjong?
Oh
Yes, you're
yes, and I have share capabilities. All right. Okay. Here we go. Okay. And then can we see? Nice. Okay. So then these contemporary issues that we then we're going to talk about and try to make the connection to the more traditional Dharma strategies were anxiety and fear, despair and hopelessness, digital distraction and information overload, burnout and overwhelm. And so those four we've covered in previous sessions, right? And so now in this session, I wanted to talk about, okay, and those first four I mentioned last week is more sort of like related to our self, kind of what's going on in our mind, right? But these last two, the polarization, and very related to that actually, is this sense of loneliness and disconnection. So these are more about how we then kind of interact with the world, right? So these last two I wanted to talk about in this session. And then we will hopefully have some time for questions, a little bit longer time for questions, maybe, because I also want to, perhaps address the things that are on your mind, right? This is the list of things on my mind, but you might have, different things that you're interested and curious about. So we can also talk about that, okay? All right. So this topic, polarization. Yes, here we gotta get into it. And so, of course, many of us know it's an issue, right? But it is always good, just like the Buddha in the first you know first teaching with the truth of suffering, then outlines and really have to understand the problem before we can talk about a solution, right? So just to kind of set the overall context for polarization, what it is and how it manifests, right? So polarization in general is this division of a group into two or more, I guess, opposing factions, right? And then in a societal context, then of course, there will be different views, there will be, different points of view. But then when the distance between those groups, grows more and more, whether it be on political, social, or cultural beliefs, then the individuals can see the opposing sides as fundamentally different and then in conflict, right? So it's not just the fact that there will be opposing factions, but then when this gets kind of, you know, goes to an extreme, then those two sides see each other as fundamentally different, and then conflict kind of arises. So then how this then manifests, we've seen the political gridlock where the, opposing parties refuse to work with each other, right? And then, so many times now, it's like the one party, they have, let's say 51 votes, right? And so the votes just come down on party lines. And that party that just has more people, elected in that assembly, they win every time, you know. And then the other one that has the 49 votes, they, they don't have, as it were, any kind of say and can't, exert any sort of force for compromise. Okay, so that's how it manifests in the political forum. Yes. Then we also see these media silos, right? And then people, they get their news um, from sources that align with their existing beliefs, right? And then this leads to the kind of information silos. On social media, they talk about the echo chambers, where then all of your kind of friends and followers and the people that you follow, you just follow the people that give you information that align with your existing beliefs, right? And then another thing with this too, there is this concept of the confirmation bias, right? Where we will also just seek out information that will confirm our existing beliefs. Hmm? And then any new information that we see as, maybe challenging that belief, we, the royal we, will then dismiss as fake news. We'll dismiss as, yeah, propaganda, this kind of thing. Now, that's not to say that fake news and propaganda don't exist in the world, but you know, we when confronted with a new piece of information that confronts our existing view, we won't kind of go in and really analyze, yeah, and dismiss it sort of out of hand. Okay. Then the last, with this dehumanization, then in a more extreme forms, this polarization can lead to viewing the other as being morally corrupt, dangerous, or even subhuman. Okay, so we've seen this in recent years, but even I remember reading a long time ago this book that came out, Guns, Germs, and Steel, yeah, by Jared Diamond. He talks about, well, how the Europeans were able to sort of, take over and colonize the quote unquote New World. And in that context, he cites some, journal entries and how the colonizers viewed the indigenous people in the quote unquote New World as being sort of, less than human. And therefore that justified the, them to come in and save them by, yeah, colonizing them and then showing their kind of, yeah, better and more enlightened, small e enlightened, yeah, form of society, right? So, yes. And then Yeah, I mean, we do see this now with the certain groups of immigrants going to a certain country, all being characterized as, um, yeah, you name it, murderers, rapists, drug dealers, very dangerous people to society. And that is then why we need to, yeah, expel them from our society. Okay. This is one of the symptoms of polarization. Okay. All right. So then, if we need any more convincing about why this is an issue, right? So in general, this polarization weakens the so-called social fabric that's needed for a healthy society, right? So one, it weakens our democracy, right? So in a deeply divided society, it becomes difficult to find common ground that we need to share to solve problems from anything from the climate crisis to the growing and vast economic inequality, right? Um, and let's just say, right, then some of these big issues that are, facing society is going to need the cooperation and the participation of more than just say, the 51%, right? It will need everyone in society working toward the goal, right? So second, then the trust in the government, media, and the legal system can erode as each side sees the other as viewing as acting in bad faith. So this also we've seen in general in many societies the kind of the trust in the so-called experts has eroded, and even now many of the experts in any given field, there's been so many who have just been fired and lost their jobs um, because they well didn't let are not letting the powers that be um, sort of have their preferred policies. Okay. All right. Um, then third point, right? This breakdown of the communication and empathy can lead to hostility and even violence when the other side is seen as an existential threat, right? So more recently, we saw this in, I think, Minnesota, where someone murdered some of the politicians there, um, and yeah, it was. They then later found a trove of the documents and social media posts from them that yeah, sort of were emblematic of highly polarized view and seeing these politicians from the party they didn't like as yeah, an existential threat to democracy, to the American way of life, and all this. Okay. Then, lastly, the polarized society can struggle to innovate and adapt as new ideas are dismissed out of hand, not based on merit, but because they come from the quote unquote other side. So this is, yeah, again, something that is, yeah, really, uh, really sad. Um, but yeah, basically, many of the policies that have been pursued by this government now in power have just been seen as undoing the work of previous administration. And when we talk about innovation, um, yeah, it is very sad that basically with this, the climate crisis in particular, um, the United States has totally backed away and therefore has basically ceded the kind of global leadership on this, including all these innovative technologies, basically has been ceded to China. And yeah, not only has that then become an issue for the energy security within the U.S., but also when we talk about these technologies being a huge platform for even economic growth and job growth, then a lot of the policies that we're going to or have been creating millions of jobs, then many of them are going away. I just saw, unfortunately, in the news that this big wind power project off the coast of Rhode Island then has been canceled, um, and it was like almost done. It was almost done, and now the funding has been pulled, and similarly yeah, many examples like this. So yeah. Now then, China is making and supplying all these kinds of technologies. So they are going to enjoy the benefits of the increased technological expertise that comes from it, and just from the economic benefits that comes now from they are exporting these technologies to many parts of the world. Ah, okay. So now we understand the context and why it's an issue. Okay, so now we can start to talk about some of the solutions, perhaps. Okay, so in general, when we have this the polarization being this extreme kind of sense of me versus or self versus other, right, or my side versus other side, then the main solution we employ from the Buddhist context is to loosen this fixed view of self and others. So we had already mentioned this quotation from Dharmakirti, that once there is the self, there is an idea of the other. On behalf of self and other, there is attachment and hostility, and all the faults come about in association with these, right? So now, in general, we do have to keep in mind these two levels of reality, the conventional reality and the ultimate reality. So that isn't then to say there's no such thing as self and no such thing as other. Excuse me. Okay. Um, so there is on a conventional level self and other, right? But remember, our ignorant mind tends to reify, to exaggerate, and make these concepts very fixed, as if they were then established on their own side, right? So yes, remember when we were talking about emptiness, then we had what looks like an H to people who know the Roman alphabet, then to someone who knows the Cyrillic alphabet, that is N, right? So both of them are viewing the same thing, right? But then based on uh, one's own kind of conceptual framework and all this, then one will, see it from that side, right? That's an N, or this is an H, and then you can imagine, the conflict just escalating like that, right? So similarly, This is going to happen, with many of the situations that we see. Um, yeah, it can get out of control when we see that there's something sort of more than what's actually there, right? Okay. So mm, then the other way to loosen the view of self and others is in our equanimity meditation, right? So in general, this is the prelude to development of bodhicitta, but uh, in the context of developing bodhicitta, right, we have this uh, this desired goal, right, to develop this mind that wishes for all sentient beings to be free from suffering, right? But when we have these fixed categories of friend, enemy, stranger, then that will prevent us from, developing compassion for all sentient beings, right? So in that context, um, we try to loosen those fixed views and fixed categories by, well, one, the first method to loosen those views is to then consider impermanence and see how, even friend, enemy, stranger is constantly in flux. And those who are our best friends now, some time ago, they were strangers, right? And then even the person that we thought we couldn't live without, maybe they will, cease to be in our lives, right? So that is one. But the other one that is probably more powerful and also good, I think better in the polarization context, is this reflection that all beings equally want happiness and don't want suffering, right? So even the one we see as, our political opponent or, someone from a different culture, a different race, yeah, they all want happiness and don't want suffering just as much as we do, right? So then I think um, keeping this in mind can then, loosen um, that kind of enemy feeling we might have to them, right? And then, especially to take a little bit more broader view, right, is then to see that the actions that they are doing, right, is being done with this wish for happiness and or to avoid suffering in mind. Okay. Now, whether that is, right, um, a quote unquote illegal immigrant, then coming into the country, right? Or a billionaire who is then pursuing tax cuts for to enrich themselves, right? They're doing that because, they think that's going to, um, uh, contribute to their happiness, right? Okay. So then now with the this thought of these ones who we see. Okay, I'll just say this first, right? Language Tangpa in the 8 verses of mind training, right? Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by negative actions and negative suffering, may I hold such rare ones dear as if I'd found a precious treasure. Okay. So part of now one of our jobs, right? Uh, when we see beings in society who are wicked in nature and then doing things that are, destructive, okay, then there's a tendency that we would, get angry at them. And then the risk is there, they would be excluded from our kind of circle of compassion or loving kindness or bodhicitta. Okay. So here, this is a very uh, quite radical statement, what we have in the Lojong teachings, right? So may we hold such rare ones dear as if I found a precious treasure. Okay. how or why, right? So, okay, there's a few ways to think about this. One is, right, in general, when we talk about the development of bodhicitta or the path to enlightenment, then, once the Shantideva, he mentions in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara that, if all beings treated us like the Buddha, right, means always kind, always doing the right thing, always being beneficial, always being loving, always being compassionate toward us, then Shantideva asks, how could we then practice patience? Right? Right? So it's true. We don't practice patience in regard to the people who are nice to us. We practice patience to the misbehaving sentient beings, right? And see such rare ones there. So I think this is the case, right? Mostly, people aren't causing so much, direct harm to us, right? Right? Um, and so it is rather rare that we encounter beings who um, get on our nerves or do something we don't like, right? Maybe coming a little bit less rare, but you know, in general, people are nice, in general, right? So then when we see beings who are wicked in nature, to then see this as a very precious opportunity, to practice patience, right? As Shantidev also says, right? In, a beggar, right, is not an obstacle to our practice of generosity, right? So similarly, these kind of troublesome, unruly, misbehaving sentient beings, they are not an obstacle to our practice of patience, right? So then we then use these situations as a very precious opportunity to further our practice along the path to enlightenment. Okay. Now, the other thing we can keep in mind is it can then also remind us when we see a being who is, well, wicked in nature, misbehaving, overwhelmed by negative actions and negative suffering, that should also remind us this is exactly why I need to attain enlightenment. Hmm? Because there are beings like this who are suffering, right? Because there are beings like this who have wrong views, because there are beings like this who have rampant afflictions, that's why I need to attain enlightenment, right? Why? Because, the point, right, as they says, the Buddha does not wash away uh, the sins with water, nor do they remove suffering with their hand, nor do they transfer their realization to another mind stream, but rather they liberate sentient beings through teaching the reality, right? Um, so uh, also the verse of homage from Nagarjuna, enthused by great compassion, you taught the holy Dharma to overcome all wrong views, to Gautam Buddha I prostrate, right? So the point is the Buddha, the whole point of him, generating compassion, traversing the path to enlightenment, is so then he could teach to eliminate the wrong views, to teach the reality. So then when we see these beings with very strong afflictions, then we should think, I'm going to attain enlightenment so I can, uh, overcome their wrong views, so I can teach them reality, so I can teach them about compassion, so I can teach them to be a better person and, give up negativity like this, right? And then, although we wish to do so now, right, it'd be great if they could get rid of their wrong views now. But then we also see the need to attain enlightenment because only then will I have all of the skills, will I have the knowledge, will I know exactly what to say or what to do so I can, overcome their wrong views, so I can teach them the right way, so I can make them see the light, right? Like this. So then it should just bolster our bodhicitta and our wish to attain enlightenment. Okay. Then there's this other quotation from Chandrakirti. Namjong Rinpoche was very fond of quoting this one as well. So thinking, when we see someone misbehaving, don't think, right? So this is not the mistake of sentient beings. It is the mistake of the delusions. By examining this well, the learned one, don't fight with sentient beings. So this thought is there also in the context of the patience chapter of Shantideva, thinking, that this person who's now misbehaving, we think of it like a doctor in a like a mental institution, maybe even one of the patients might pick up scissors or a knife and then kind of tries to attack others. Then they see, oh, this is a consequence of their mental illness. And then these doctors, they don't get mad at the person, but they will then try to sincerely help, right? So similarly, we see actually all of the root of suffering being in the delusions, right? So then at the very least, then not to get angry and employing this thought, right? Hate the sin, love the sinner, right? Which we have in the Christian context. Then is to see that this person is under the control of their delusion, and at the very least, then not to get angry. And if we can, then this can even help us start to generate compassion for them, right? Yeah. And in my own experience and practice, I think it is also very good to reflect, in our own lives, those times when we have done something to harm someone else, seeing how that was then motivated by the afflictions, be it, greed or jealousy, pride, anger, something like this. So we then recall when we were angry, then we said that thing to hurt someone else. When we were greedy, we cheated someone else like this. And so then seeing how in our own mind, in our own lives, how those afflictions then led us to do things we don't like, later come to regret, then seeing other people doing these negative things, we can also see, oh, it's due to their delusions. Okay. Yeah. One more thing from Shantideva. When someone like hits us with a stick, right? We don't get angry at the stick, right? Even though the stick is what actually hit us, we don't get angry at the stick, but we get angry at the person because we see that the person is the one wielding the stick. But now, in a similar way, Shantideva asks us to look one step further and actually understand how that person, him or herself, is being wielded by their afflictions. And so, seeing in that way, we, yeah, can generate some compassion, or at least practice patience. Okay. Then, some more kind of advice from the Lojong teachings. We have this thought, right? One of the Lojong precepts is to drive all the blame into one. Okay. Now that doesn't mean drive all the blame into one person like the president, but rather it is seeing our own self-cherishing mind as the enemy, right? As Shantideva says, all of the suffering that we see in the world has arisen from the wish of wanting happiness for oneself. And all the joy that there is in the world has come from the wish desiring happiness for others. Hmm? So fundamentally, it is our own self-cherishing mind that is the root enemy, right? And we all have the karma to experience everything we experience is due to our own karma. You know, I remember Lama Zopa Rinpoche saying, rather than doing a retreat, um, you know, reciting mantra, he says instead of a mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum, we should recite as a mantra, uh, all the suffering has come from my own mind, right? Or, sorry, he says we should recite as a mantra, everything I experience has come from my own mind. Everything I experience has come from my own mind, right? So I always like to joke, right? When we uh, have a friend, okay, who then experiences some kind of negativity or some bad situation, then there's a tendency that we become very expert on karma, right? And oh, it's your karma, oh da da da, right? But then when we experience some kind of problem, right? Then all of our understanding of karma goes out the window. And then when we talk to the same friend, we start complaining. Can you believe what this person did to me? Can you believe they did this or that? You know? So having this thought of everything we experience um, is coming from our own mind, coming from our own karma. I think that can at least start to loosen this, anger we might have. I'm not sure I mentioned this to this group, but it's very, very, very interesting. Back in 2016, Lamso Rinpoche was leading a retreat somewhere, and he was asked about, what he thought about Donald Trump, and Rinpoche gave a very interesting sort of answer. Um, Rather than talking about, Mr. Trump as a person, he talked about how a society, right? Um, if the society, if the country, if the people in that country don't have sufficient merit, right, means they don't have sufficient good karma, then they won't have the karma to have a good leader. And then he said, when that happens, then that society, they'll experience epidemic diseases and economic problems and increased natural disasters and this kind of thing. Very interesting. Very interesting. Hmm. So, in part, on a larger scale, there are many proportion of the population who are maybe uh, living under not the most enlightened leaders, but then we also have to understand, mm, it's my karma. Right? They talk about in the traditional texts, right? You might have seen this phrase, right? The wheel turning king, right? The wheel turning king. Have you seen that? Right. So this is sort of held up as the exemplar of someone who has tremendous merit. Anyway, the point is this particular wheel turning king, they are the leader of the whole world, not just one country. At that time, there's no kind of factions of countries. But the amazing thing about them is uh, from the power of the merit, they then use their kind of political power to establish all the people in the world in doing the 10 virtues, and abandoning the 10 non-virtues. So then it's said that, the society is so good because everyone is abiding in virtue. No one's harming each other and all this, right? So could be, very, very different kind of world where, the leaders use their power and influence to, encourage and establish people in virtue. Hmm. Okay. Then, next, sort of, advice we get from the Lojong teachings. This again, there's a very beautiful stanza in the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas, where again, Tokmen Zampo says, uh, all of the suffering is like the the mother whose child dies in a dream. Therefore, when suffering arises, to view it as illusory is the practice of a bodhisattva. Okay. So this then is not to throw out the conventional reality because there is suffering. There is suffering. And in general, we should work on a conventional level to alleviate the suffering of others, to work for a better society. But this is, when we experience the suffering to help us, that it doesn't then, become so fixed, so concrete that it could then lead to, us getting despondent and depressed about it, is to just sort of loosen and say, okay, it's like a dream. It's like a dream. Um, now, and hmm, you see, when we were talking on a more ultimate level about uh, ultimate reality, then our normal tendency, the ignorant mind, is then to, right, really, reify and fix things, right? So they normally say the antidote to that fixed view of reality is the understanding of interdependence, right? And so that things are arising from causes and conditions, that things are merely labeled by the mind, like this, right? And so, one, when it is our suffering, to see it as arising from many different causes and conditions, and those different causes and conditions can change. Those are not fixed. And therefore, even our suffering is not fixed, right? And if we, change our minds, if we change our karma, if we purify, then we can, change the experiences we have in life, right? So that kind of reflection can be very, very useful for us. Seeing our own suffering as like a dream, seeing it as not fixed, seeing it as not so solid, right? Then it can help counteract this sense of hopelessness. Um, and then rather than just fixating on the current situation, it can help us be more kind of future focused, solution focused, and say, okay, I'm going to, uh, live my life in a different way. I'm going to change my karma so I have different experiences in the future. Okay. Then the other point, this last bullet point, also, the views of right and wrong are from a certain perspective, a certain value system, and not inherently right and wrong, right? Now, um, even this view of like what it means to be positive and negative in terms of karma is from a value system that beings don't want suffering and beings want happiness, right? Um, so then we even view something that we normally consider negative, like lying or stealing, as from the standpoint of that leading to negative effects, right? One engaging in that kind of behavior is then going to experience suffering, and that's the reason why we call something right or wrong, right? But on kind of smaller perspectives, right? One might have a value system that let's just say one that promotes the individual freedom, or someone might prefer a system that prefers like equality in the system, in the society, right? And so just keeping in mind that even the conclusions we make about how society should be structured is then based on the fundamental belief system that we might have. Mm. And that can help then loosen this idea of it being inherently right or wrong. Okay. Now, from Bodhisattva perspective, since we want all beings to be happy, then a Bodhisattva would definitely how do you say, prefer one type of governance or society that is going to, minimize the suffering for beings. Yeah. But even that is, not to be held too tightly. Okay. So then lastly, I do think even this kind of loneliness and sense of disconnectedness with society is uh, quite tied to the sense of polarization, right? So some things that we can maybe try to do is to maintain connections with a variety of people from different backgrounds, views, and socioeconomic conditions. Okay. And so I often, share the fact that uh, one of my good friends in Hawaii, um, well, he holds quite extreme views on one side, and a lot of our own, friends from growing up in high school, he's basically kind of gone away from all of them. Um, and so now, when I go back to Hawaii, I do, spend time with him. Um, and when I'm with him, I try as much as possible not to talk about politics. But, we go hiking, we go to the beach, and we will talk about, a variety of things, um, not related to politics. He's actually, in many ways, he's quite smart. He's into AI. So, I, um, I we talk about how I can, use AI to help with like translation, to help with some of these other projects I'm involved in. So, I think it's quite good for the both of us, you know. And when we maintain these relationships, then it is good to, not talk about politics. And see, this is the thing, right? Life is so rich and has so many facets. And somehow in society, it, certain political views have just dominated. And then this becomes kind of a litmus test, you understand? Whether that person can be, in our lives. Whereas even, you know, 30, 40 years ago, people could have, uh, maybe even less, even like 15 years ago, maybe, you know, people could have friends from different points of views, and you can talk civilly about these differences and get along. Now it's become somehow quite difficult, right? So anyway, having these connections, maintaining these connections with different people, um, can help. it is often said that, people aren't convinced by facts anymore, right? We talked about the confirmation bias that goes on. And so you're not going to change someone's mind with facts. But what does happen when people are, exposed to people from different backgrounds and so forth, then when they come to like people on a personal level, then that can sort of soften their views on these things. And so there were many, I just saw an article where, um, there is someone in a certain community who happened to be an immigrant, and that state had, or that community had voted overwhelmingly for, uh, you know, uh, one political party that was trying to be tougher on immigration. And then this person who I think was a waitress or a cook in a local restaurant, then when that person was deported, you know, um, then the whole community then kind of came up and they were like, no, but we we like this person, right? Um, so anyway, that is one thing. Then with this whole, misinformation problem, then it's good. There's a tendency, right, when something goes on social media that we don't like, then we'll share the one we don't like, we'll argue, we'll, say bad things about the person who wrote and all this. But even that, fuels the algorithm. And that is actually what these social media companies are trying to do. So it's better not to engage in these kinds of things at all, right? And then lastly, uh, getting involved in community projects, volunteering, all this. Well, one, then, these small things can make a difference, right? Two, these getting involved in the community can foster community bonds, right? And we will, then meet people from different backgrounds, and this can then also help the society. And then I think I mentioned this last time, but helping those who are, uh, as we say, less fortunate than us, it can even help us get out of our like me, self-centeredness. And whereas the self-centered mind then thinks that my problems are the biggest in the world, right? Then when we, say volunteer and are helping people that are less fortunate than us, then that can help us uh, develop a sense of, gratitude and appreciation for our own situation. And then, yeah, come to see that our problems, well, they're not as big as we might think. So that is what I wanted to say. And I do have two final closing thoughts, but I also wanted to open it up for questions, comments, observations, and then I'll have a few closing thoughts at the end. So we can open it up for questions. Susan, you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Okay, well, I appreciate all of those suggestions. I think they're about, in particular, about polarization. And that's a very difficult thing because when we feel physically threatened by what the other side is clearly doing, then it's hard to just, I mean, it's possible to just don't talk about it with other people, but then it's hard to really be friends with them. because you have to have these barriers, these alert, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. Things that we would, like you say, 10 years ago have been able to easily talk about. But now, because it has assumed the proportions of, well, actually violating our Constitution, threatening people's lives, threatening our ability to survive on the planet, it's really hard to be neutral like that and maintain a friendship. I find it that way. So anything about that?
Yes. So I know it is difficult. So a lot of these things, when we see the Bodhisattva ideal, we see Shantideva, right? These are quite advanced ways of thinking, right? This is how a Bodhisattva thinks. And then in our reality, like we're here, and then we see the Bodhisattva up here. So um in relation to the practice of generosity, I'll use this as an example. Shantideva says, right, because bodhisattvas, you see, they cut off their arms, they cut off their heads to benefit sentient beings. But Shantideva says, if you're not ready to give away your limbs, then start by giving away vegetables, right? So in a similar way, um, if we're not ready to, invite this person to our wedding, right, then maybe we can start by just, smiling, being civil, something like this. This isn't then to mean we have to like befriend and like what they're doing or what they're saying, but in our mind, if we can just keep it as what we're talking about, you know, blaming the afflictions, not them, right? And uh, even keeping a neutral rather than viewing as an enemy, that can help our mind, right? Because the point of these practices of patience um, is really so we don't get angry, right? We don't get angry. And then these things that you're talking about, the things in society, we can still work for, right? And that might even be we go to the protests, we do what we can to work for these things in society. But as I often mention, there could be a bodhisattva, let's say, or an aspiring bodhisattva, who even goes to a protest and they're next to someone, and they're yelling slogans, they're working for the social change, but the mind is very different, right? The mind can be of compassion rather than maybe someone next to them in the protest, they're angry, and they're yelling the slogans and whatnot, right? And then in terms of like who we choose to befriend or not befriend in life, yes, we have to be aware of where we are, and with some of these difficult beings, then we can choose out of compassion, not then to be so close with them, spending a lot of time with them and all this, but in the mind as much as possible. One, we can think, okay, recognizing that where I am on the path now, since my, bodhicitta, since my compassion is not as developed as I would want it to be, then my interaction with this person, it's only kind of, triggering me and causing anger to arise. So at this point in my life, I need to kind of step back a little bit. But even having the aspiration that when I train further in the path, and I develop my sense of compassion more, then I hope to be able to engage with this person in a more constructive manner, you know? And that is fine to do. We give a similar, or I mean, there is a similar kind of advice for people in like abusive relationships or something like this, right? Where there can be a like a little bit misconception where you think, okay, I have to be compassionate, so I'm going to, just let this person harm me, or I'm gonna, stay in this harmful situation. So it's not necessarily that way. And just like someone in an abusive relationship, they can leave that relationship with a mind of compassion, you know. So you too can choose to distance yourself from people on a physical and you can back away from the relationship with a mind of compassion, but in your mind try to maintain compassion. How does that sound?
That sounds very good. It makes a lot of sense because what's the alternative? I mean, just feeling angry and upset all the time, which doesn't benefit us or anybody. At least we could try to make ourselves feel better by not getting angry and not being confrontational. I mean, stating a point of view if it comes up, but not letting anger taint the whole thing, that would be much better. Yeah, something to work for. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Scarlett?
Hello, good morning. Um, so this is a really interesting kind of feeling that I've been wondering your thoughts on. So ultimately, there is no self. There's no self in anything, right? Everything is dependent arising, and therefore, like every human being, just causes and conditions. And like in my head, I think, okay, maybe like we're all like phantoms, right? Like just like an illusion. So when I interact with AI, right, I know that there's no person there. I don't, I don't know if I'm gonna be articulate in what I want to ask you, but like I know that who I'm interacting with is not real. I'm not rude. I am very respectful, but I don't have an attachment to that AI because I know it's not real. So when is it like sort of wrong to view my interactions with humans that way? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like that, you're in front of me, causes and conditions have come together for us to interact. You're a reflection of my mind, but ultimately you're a phantom. And like, for there to be not an attachment is what I'm kind of feeling. Like, I have this conflict. Can you speak about it?
Yes. Okay. So maybe you need to speak to my friend in Hawaii. It'll be good. You can talk about AI and he might be of a different political spectrum from you. Okay, anyway, just joking. So, okay, Scarlett, we need to um, keep this in mind, okay? When we talk about the two levels of reality, they are both reality, okay? So the conventional reality is reality. So we have to keep in mind that when we talk about this stuff, we say like an illusion, right? It's like an illusion, but it's not like a total illusion, right? In the sense that, okay, I am a person, right? And so when we talk about something being merely labeled by the mind, we talk about it being merely labeled by the mind on a valid base. So my body and mind are a valid base to be labeled person, but uh, ChatGPT, for example, is not a valid base to be labeled person. Okay. So when you interact with ChatGPT, yes, there's answers coming back, right? But that is not a person even on a conventional level. right? And if it's not it's not a person on a conventional level or on an ultimate level. Okay. Now, when you interact with me, you ask a question, I give an answer, right? Um, on an ultimate level, I'm also not a person, but on a conventional level, I am a person. Okay. So now when you go through life, you know, as an antidote to attachment, okay? So I'll give an analogy in Buddhist context. There is this view of the mind-only school, right? Now, the mind-only school in Buddhism holds that there's no external reality apart from our own mind. Okay. Now, this is later refuted by the higher schools within Buddhism, but this kind of it's like idealism within Western philosophical thought, where there's no external reality. It's just all like a dream, right? It's all a dream. Now, although this view is later refuted by the higher school within Buddhism, they do say it can be useful, right, to counteract our attachment to have this thought, right? Hmm?
Mhm.
So if you are having, strong attachment to some person, to view it like an illusion, where there's no kind of, substantial reality of that person, and that can be an antidote to your attachment, that can be good. That can be a skillful means. But um, we like to say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
then don't fall into a nihilistic view that there are no persons. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a person, but actually what Rinpoche would always say is the reality of the person, how they exist is so subtle, it's as if they don't exist. It's as if it's it's like one little step from not existing whatsoever. But they exist, you know? Like if we go back to the H, right? Those three lines, so H's exist, right? H's exist. We can't say they don't exist. But how it exists, based on the three lines like this, then a linguistic community comes together and says, that's an H. And then we all agree. Okay, and then some people start calling that H. That's all that needs to exist for there to be an H, right? But it's very subtle because then another community seeing that same thing, and you know, it's very subtle.
So
But
is
it,
that,
mm,
sorry,
yeah.
is that
Go ahead, go
other
ahead.
the school that you were saying that refutes that everything uh comes from the mind, is it you said the higher school saying that everything is dependent arising? Can you just clarify what
Yes,
you
yes,
mean?
yes. The mind-only school. It's not just that they're saying everything comes from the mind, but it actually like everything is the substance of the mind, right? So even like the cup, right? The cup, our normal view of reality is that this is like a material that's a different substance from the mind, right? It's an external reality, right? Whereas when I dream of a cup, there's no cup out there. It's just uh, kind of the same substance as the dreaming consciousness seeing the cup. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So uh, the higher school, everything is a dependent arising. Okay. Then there's even three levels of dependent arising. There's things arise from causes and conditions. Then things are dependent on their parts. And then things are dependent on those three, the basis of designation, the label, and the mind attaching the label to the base. Okay. But this one, when we say it's merely labeled by the mind, then it's not just that anything can be labeled anything, right? We can't just call this an elephant and then somehow it is an elephant, right? It has to perform the function of an elephant, right? So this is what we're talking about. The chat GPT is is not suitable to be labeled a person because it can't perform the functions. Well, we should say all the functions of a person, right? It can perform some functions of a person, right? But that's okay too. Um, you know, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just having this conflict of like, recently I've been having to talk to a lot of AIs because I think companies are preferring, like for example, FedEx, right? I have to talk to this AI and I'm getting angry because I don't want to talk to the AI. I need to talk to a person, but I know there's no point to get angry because there's nobody there. Like there's no person. Yet, if a human I interact with and does something, my anger arises, and I know there is a person, and I'm wanting to lash out on that person, but I won't do it for the AI because I know it's not a person.
Really? Wow,
Hmm.
that's very interesting because
So this is
I
why I'm asking you about, do I is it wrong to view humans I interact with as empty causes and conditions creating because I get attached to that person that's making me angry. But I won't be angry with the AI from FedEx driving me insane because I need to talk to an agent.
that's very interesting. I'll say this. I read something that like, for Siri, yeah, then you can choose a male voice or a female voice, right?
Hmm.
And then they found, this is for men. They said men should choose a male voice because of whatever societal programming. The men they found would get more angry and talk rudely to the female Siri than the male Siri, right?
Hmm.
It's like that. So that was one advice. But this was showing that then the people, even though it's just a female voice, but it'll say like, they'll be like disrespectful and not nice to it. Now, in your situation,
And
uh,
also, I want to
yeah,
add, I
go
know the
ahead.
AI is not going to lash out on me. Like, I know that this is not real and I need to be respectful and just kind of um continue to repeat what I need until an agent comes because I know that AI is not going to lash out on me.
Okay. So it's a very interesting problem.
Very interesting.
On one level, right? Karmically speaking, it's almost like because the negative side of getting angry, the negative side of, saying something nasty, all this, since that's going to harm you, almost on one level, I want to say like do whatever it takes not to get angry. You know what I mean? Right? Seeing how negative that would be for you, right? But um, you know, maybe on another level, we can consider it. Of course, this reflection on emptiness is like the best antidote to all the afflictions, right? But maybe you can consider, I don't know, some of those other menu of options we have, thinking that this person on the other side, right? They want to be happy, they don't want to suffer. They probably, can you imagine? They are now a customer service agent answering calls from frustrated customers, you know, 10 to 12 hours a day. Can you imagine what that would be like? Oh my gosh. Wow. I was talking the other day that, actually a bodhisattva, they they might want to apply for and get a job as a customer service agent just so they would have more opportunities for these disgruntled customers to do this, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I will say, not with you guys, of course, but another job that gives you many opportunities for this kind of patience is to be a Dharma teacher. Okay. So, so then just to think, put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? And most of the time, those people on the computers, the FedEx, they don't really know where your package is. I mean, they're probably not an omniscient Buddha, right? So just keep that in mind about what you're kind of like asking them to do, right? So these kind of, not as like the all-encompassing view of emptiness, we probably have some antidotes at our disposal to prevent us from getting upset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember one of my one of the stories I like about customer service agents. Um, yeah, it's our last session this month, so we'll go a couple minutes over. So one time I was flying to Bodh Gaya. Okay, so Bodh Gaya is the place where the Buddha was enlightened, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama was giving teachings. Okay, so I'm in Delhi, and I'm trying to fly to Bodh Gaya, and I get a notification that morning, your flight has been delayed for whatever, 3 hours. Okay. So I get it on time. And I'm like, okay, I'll just, I was staying with some friends. I'm like, I'll just, have a relaxing breakfast with them and then go to the airport, on time. I get to the airport and they tell me, sorry, there are no more seats. I said, what? I had a reservation, blah, blah, blah. They said, no, yeah, you checked in too late. I said, what? You told me that you were late, right? You told me you were 3 hours late. I'm coming 3 hours late. I mean, it's, still, you know, uh, it was like still 2 hours before the flight, right? They're like, no, no, no. And so I have to say, right? Then I am, not pleased. And this is the thing, right? To attend His Holiness teachings, you need a teaching pass. And now they said they would put me on the next flight, but then I was going to be too late to make the pass. And then I wouldn't be able to go into the Dalai Lama's teachings, which are the next morning, all this. So I'm trying to, escalate. And then, those magic words, all you Americans know the magic words for getting good customer service. This is unacceptable. Okay. Then this person, bless him, this Air India agent at the counter, his English wasn't that great, but he just says, "Sir, you must accept." And it was like, wow, this is what I'm talking about. A bodhisattva would get that kind of job. Sir, you must accept. And it just kind of clicked to me, right? All of this, like, can I see your manager? I demand this. Don't you, I wasn't going as far as, don't you know who I am? That's another one, right? You see, don't you know who I am? But whatever I was going to say to this person, there were no seats on the plane, right? All the seats were allocated. They had given it up, right? And so me yelling, it's not like then my yelling was going to like somehow magically create another row of seats and I could fly in the same plane, right? I had to accept. So that is also, I think, quite useful when we deal. We need to know, like the Serenity Prayer, right? Um, Bless me to know, change the things I can change, accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? Something like this. So, and in any case, your anger isn't going to help. your anger is actually going to distort your thinking, right? So rather than getting angry, you can still be focused and on the solution and like the situation, but your anger isn't going to help, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that anger is just kind of wasted energy. So then when I was able to let go, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting on this flight. So what do I do? Okay. Well, all right. Those teachings from His Holiness, they're still broadcast. So I will bring my radio, and when I'm trying to check in the next day, I will bring my radio, my earphones, and I'll listen to the teachings while I'm in mine. So in that sense, I don't miss, right? Or whatever, you know? Okay, I can't get on this flight. What's the next flight? Okay, then making arrangements. Okay, then how I'm going to get to the airport, blah, 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 blah. You then are focusing on the things in your control that are actually going to make your the situation better, rather than wasting energy on something that's not going to do anything except make you more upset.
Yeah. Did you at all thought, oh, here's the dependent arising, so that um and there's just causes and conditions, so like that alone will diffuse something? Like, did that pop
Well,
into your mind? Because you're so
well,
into, you know, uh the Dharma. Like
well,
I
I tell you, unfortunately, Scarlett, there's this saying, everyone looks like a great Dharma practitioner when the sun is shining and their belly is full. Okay? So yes, I do a great job. I'll talk about dependent arising all day, right? But when it comes that you know, then the eyes coming, all that nice talk about Dharma, Nagarjuna, Chandakirti, all his friends, they're out the window. They've already taken the flight. They've
that
left.
happens to me
And it's
too.
just me, right? No, no. So I'm a little bit joking. But for me, honestly, in the moment, you have to, okay, all of your Dharma toolkit, which are your antidotes to the afflictions, there's some that are going to be easier to use. Okay. And I mean, at that time, yes, the emptiness dependent arising, that didn't come to my mind. That that doesn't come naturally. But there's other ones about you know, um, getting angry isn't going to help. Actually, what helps a lot, because I'm wearing robes, right, is to think I can't blow up, because I'm in front of all kinds of people, and what are they going to think about the Buddhist Sangha? And it's a bit ironic, right? I'm here and I'm like, I need to go to see His Holiness. He is going to talk about compassion and I need to see that. It's like, you know, something
Mhm.
like this, right? So whatever you can do in that moment that's going to help, use that one. Use the easy. And actually, it was okay. I'm a little bit exaggerating. I was, you know, upset, but I wasn't, pounding the table and all this. I did say this is unacceptable. That I did say. But that is also from the imprints I had from, my corporate life when I was flying every week and, this kind of thing, right? So anyway, um, I guess the point is, if you can remember dependent arising and that helps you from getting angry, great, use that. For me, actually, probably in that situation, it was the fact that I don't want to, create a scene because I'm representing the Buddhist Sangha. That was powerful, you know, and that's great. Mm.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes. Susan, I saw your hand up and now it's back down.
Oh, well, I just want to mention, I really appreciated Scarlett's question. That was a fascinating question. And I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. But I have a different reaction than Scarlett has, and that is when AI calls me, if it makes me angry at AI, I get mad at AI sometimes because I think I feel insulted that they're using a machine to try to extract something from me. They want something. But that's ridiculous when you think about the person, the customer service, bodhisattva, whatever, maybe just frustrated customer service person, because then they're going to get a lot of customers who think that way, who take out their frustration on the one that we should care about, the actual person. So that person's going to take more heat. And the machine just goes on and does its thing. But getting mad at the machine and then passing it on to the actual human being, that's bad. That's a bad effect of getting angry at the machine. That's just what I was thinking.
Yes. Great. Okay, well, I just have two more kind of parting quotations from Shantideva. Okay. Hello. No, so these are two quotations, right? There's riding the horse of bodhicitta, which proceeds from joy to joy, what despondent person would not be cheered up? Okay. So His Holiness is very fond of quoting this verse from Shantideva. And, when we truly are able to live with bodhicitta, so proceeding from joy to joy, right, then even we'll see these difficult situations as, seeing this negative person overwhelmed by suffering as a wish-fulfilling jewel, as they're so rare. Oh, amazing. Or seeing some person who's suffering, then we'll see that, okay, great, this is someone I can help. You know what I mean? So they normally say, Chandakirti says that a bodhisattva on the first ground, on the first level, when they're even asked to give something, they generate more bliss in their minds than someone who's attained nirvana. Because the whole orientation is around helping and benefiting others. Okay. So then in this case, yes, on a bigger level, maybe our actions are not going to, solve these global problems. But as I mentioned with the starfish example, keep throwing those starfish one at a time back into the ocean. And the actions we have on a small level do make a difference. And, they also say, if we can't do sort of big actions, we can do small actions with a big motivation, right? So that's the one thing. And then this next one, where would there be enough leather to cover the entire world, right? So when we walk, if we walk barefoot, then all these rocks and thorns and all this, one solution would be to cover the whole world with leather. Then we wouldn't feel, the thorns on our feet. But just with the leather of the sandals, it's as if the whole world were covered, right? So likewise, I am unable to restrain all external phenomena, means especially the unruly beings in the world. But if I restrain my own mind, what need is there to restrain anything else? So Lama Zopa Rinpoche also had a bumper sticker on his car. No anger, no enemy. Okay. So if we can, we can't change the external world so much, but we can change our mind. And if we take control of our anger, then there's no enemy. So thank you very much, everyone. This is our last session for the time being, but we all came together with a good motivation, and even doing that creates some nice karma that we can meet again in the future, and also try to do good things and make the world a better place. So with that, let us do one final dedication, that due to the merit that we have accumulated in our time here today, and over the last 9 weeks, may all sentient beings, vast as the vastness of space, quickly be freed of all their suffering and attain the state of enlightenment as quickly as possible. Then, particularly, may this mind of bodhicitta, this altruistic wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, may that arise in our hearts and in the hearts of all sentient beings without even a second's delay. And may that altruistic wish that has already been generated, and may that increase. And then Lama Zopa Rinpoche would dedicate like this: then due to the power of sentient beings generating bodhicitta, right? And maybe we can add, even before they generate bodhicitta, then may all the problems we see in the world, the problems due to war, the problems due to environmental degradation and the climate crisis, problems due to mental and physical illness, problems due to, economic problems and economic inequality, natural disasters, all the kind of proximate causes for mental and physical suffering that we see in the world, may these instantly be pacified in this and all the world systems of the 10 directions. And instead, may all beings enjoy only the most conducive conditions for happiness in this life and sustaining their Dharma practice, including having enough, material resources, having access to Dharma teachers and the teachings, having good health of both body and mind, having the facilities to practice, including good retreat centers, Dharma centers, and so forth. And in this way, become enlightened as quickly as possible. And then I will also dedicate for all those centers, particularly Thupten Nobu Ling, and all the other centers of FPMT, all the other, Buddhist monasteries and centers, teaching these methods to overcome suffering. May they also have all the required conditions so they can be successful in their projects and activities to promote the Dharma and alleviate the suffering of sentient beings. So with that, I wish you all the best, and thanks for your participation, and thank you for your efforts to benefit sentient beings.